Unbelievably, am ready. Thank you for your patience, everybody.
Now it's time for questions. Thank you so much.
Okay. The intention here was actually not to do it in quite this way, so I will be partially turning around to watch what I'm typing blindly on the screen behind me. This is a deeply masochistic live demo marathon based on the book. I will not waste any further time. Okay, I'm from Control Plane. We have far higher quality standards than have been currently espoused, I guarantee. I'm very proud to be involved with various organizations. We've written stuff for SANS and O'Reilly. We've trained for HashiCorp and Docker. My background is a classically trained computer scientist who was just given too many responsibilities. And very proud to be the co-author of Hacking Kubernetes with my esteemed and preeminent friend, Mr. Michael Hausenblas, solution architect at AWS. The book is available for free download if you follow that link from the Control Plane website behind an email capture. Alternatively, we've got about 15 copies that we'll give away and sign directly after this. And if somebody can ask me a cloud-native security question that I can't answer, then you can win a copy of the book now as well. Okay, TLDR, what are we going to do? We'll talk about threat models. What is the point of doing this without some sort of quantifiable basis? We will look at how Kubernetes can get hacked. Then we've got a selection of supply chain demos, just as a demo 0 to set the scene. Demo 1 is a reverse shell. Then we're going to break out a container with a non-deterministic dirty pipe exploit. It works 50% of the time. Then we'll look at how we enumerate a host after we've broken out of a container. Finally, we'll look at how we can escalate from a home node out into the cloud. And then the book. So many people have taught us so much, and me personally, about Kubernetes. Strong recommend to look at some of these talks. The ones with my name on have various live demos that I won't do today. This is what happens when a security team sees Kubernetes. Nobody likes it very much. Often it is a developer-driven initiative, and the security team are left somewhat in the dark. We will model our attacks from the lens of the nefarious 8-bit adversary pirate Captain Hashjack. He is a motivated criminal and fits into a landscape of different threat actors. So what we're doing here is, before any security or sensible security efforts, we want to understand who are we defending against in order to apply the requisite controls. We don't want to go too far. We also don't want to undercook something that requires a high degree of concern. The profile and the skills and resources available to people are some of the most interesting things to us. This is how we model this. Shout out to everybody who attended the training course that Lewis and I put on for the last 2 days. We were talking about cloud services insiders. They sit as the sort of penultimate level of danger because of the potential level of access that they have, capital 1. Of course, the way that we model things, from a defensive perspective, we have to be exhaustive. There's nothing that we can get wrong, otherwise we open the door. From an attacker's perspective, it's just lots of fun, novelty, firing neurons, and just having a good time, looking for that little gap in the armor. So Control Plane is big on attack trees. They are hairy and complex, but they give a visualization to what is otherwise just a long list of threats. The benefit of drawing something like this, which is something we did for the financial services user group under the CNCF, is that you can then overlay controls and understand what defensive mechanisms actually move the needle and cover multiple attack branches. We do training on this as well. It's all open source. Right, and with that, don't panic is today's tagline. All right. Well, code to cloud, the 4 C's of Kubernetes security. We start with the code. The assumption here that we can make with containers as an abstraction is that all code is broken and the code inside the container is already compromised. Why is that useful? Well, because if you're thinking about your developers' applications Because adversarial, which some security teams may do naturally, it affects the way that we build the topology of our applications. So from this perspective today, we will look at what happens when the code is compromised, when the container is compromised, when the cluster, and of course also the colo. The goal here really is to have self-contained and hardened security wrappers around each of these things, and then of course we can overlay these onto things that you know and love. Okay, here we go. Let's start with, ooh, interesting, let's do that. That looks like, what's going on there? There we go. Okay, so, nice, I can actually see it down here. All of that fun. Here we go. So what are we going to do here? We're going to look at the open source supply chain as stage 0 of an attack. Processware is a new and joyful type of essentially compromised maintainer, emotionally or politically compromised in some way. All right, very quickly, supply chain, ELI5. Everything is software. We make software from other people's software. And so we rely on the producers. In this case, there was somebody took umbrage to, rightly perhaps they should, the situation occurring in Europe at the moment, and placed a piece of code that caused damage to somebody who used it when their IP was geolocated to Russia or Belarus. Not a good look for open source. It tarnishes all of us as trustworthy producers of code. And of course, here we have the supply chain problem. If malware turns up in the build, either from a dependency, or a special transitive dependency, which is less likely to be investigated or respected, or SolarWinds type compromise where the build chain is actually modified in flight, super difficult to do and a lot rarer than, of course, open source issues, then malware runs in production. So how do we attack the supply chain? We can mess with the source code on the developer's machine or their Git keys, the repo, the build infrastructure, a supplier, like somebody pushing open source, or in fact the runtime environment the source is running in. So, LA0. What we're going to do is show you how NPM is vulnerable to this kind of stuff. Thoughts on that for size? Okay?
It's good.
Nice. All right. So, what we have here is a classic NPM package with a package JSON. This is a POM XML. This is our requirements, txt. But as you can see, it contains a few other things. Let's just do that through. So we have this ability to run scripts. When we install something from our operating system package repository maintainer, that installs as root. And that installs as root because we need to drop things in Linux in privileged places so that they can run. And so they can't be tampered with by subsequent unprivileged users of the system. Various open source or application dependencies offer us the same opportunity. So we can do an npm run test, and it executes, it just passes that to a bash shell. Or maybe a shell, I'm not sure exactly what it is. So pre-install then. What's going to happen if we do an npm install in this directory? It's going to run on nefarious exfiltration scripts. What does that mean? Well, it's kind of like pipe to bash. We are giving away the keys to the kingdom, and what can we do? Well, we can get keyloggers involved. This one's a little bit stealthy. Maybe we do some kind of wallets. And this is probably the worst. We're going to lose our signing keys, maybe for Git repos, maybe GPG. Both of those keys are exfiltrated and are not password protected. I mean, the keylog is there to grab the password as well. And that's various elements of my keychain. This is just exfiltrated my local development environment and identity because I didn't look what I was doing. And if I put this, NPM are now much better at checking what is being installed, what is being uploaded. But if I was to do an npm install and this was an actual package, let's say, which is not, then this would just get people. It's a watering hole attack because people expect NPM to be safe, but actually it is definitely not in this case. Okay, so what does that mean for us? What have we done? Malware in an application dependency has attacked the end user device. The end user pulled this malicious package. The package installer runs the malware on behalf of the attacker in your environment. It's how it's meant to be, but no one's really thinking about the side effects. And we look at things like this process where people are shocked. But we consume open source without paying developers, without incentivizing bug fixes. It is the Easter egg waiting to bite financial services across the world. So game over approaches, we can steal identity, tamper with code, persist, cryptojacking for the sake of it. So yeah, this is what we did. We ran back to an open source package, abused the pre-install hook, and profit. Okay, that just sets the scene. This is a view on how that can be used in a Kubernetes system. So what we're looking at here is at the bottom, we're sneaking malicious code into a target library. That could be as a property or as a secondary or tertiary property of the original attack. If I just run that code and somebody exfiltrated my credentials, they would then be able to sign stuff that I publish in open source. And that's got a degree of trust to it because of it's a human reputational based system at the moment, along with the cryptographic bases of my keys. So what's happened? We have snuck malicious code into the library down here. Any of those third-party dependencies, operating system dependencies are a lot harder to intrude upon. Those of us that enjoy evergreen sort of rolling releases, slightly higher risk because those things move a lot more quickly. So in that goes, the dependency is ingested into CI/CD. You may or may not have fully offline hermetic build systems that don't allow internet pulls. And you would do that by having some sort of Artifactory Nexus style based proxy, and then being very careful about what you put in there. Maybe that's a kind of 7 to 10 day latency on new packages. Maybe it's actually vulnerability assessment on all the packages, but probably not, because it's unlikely people do those things. Dependency comes in, developers pull it, build a malicious container image, and it goes to production. CI/CD doesn't detect the malicious code, depending on your advancement as an organization. In it goes to production, the payload runs in a container, and we fire a reverse shell. This attacker here, Captain Hashjack, has an open port, sat on a publicly routable IP, and we have jumped, potentially bust through a firewall, because you couldn't go into that, because the shell is obviously reversed, coming back out again, and we'll go through this in a bit more detail as we progress. Okay. Phase 1 complete. So how do we fix these things? Well, we probably want to sign things, probably don't want to leave plain text credentials anywhere. Of course, cloud provider integrations or OAuth2 need to drop a session token somewhere. There is always that kind of hour-ish window. Somebody can just pull that token, they can then spoof your identity from a different location. Hardware crypto wallets. When this happened to the event stream NPN package, it was really well, it was quite beautifully and elegantly obfuscated. It was just looking for crypto wallets, just looking for hot wallets. So, stands to reason, that's not good practice. Air gapping, and finally signing. Does the signing really work? It's the question of who at this point in time trusted this thing. So, it's a combination of these approaches that we find useful. Okay, so we looked at the supply chain from a simplistic local perspective. Now let's look at it from Captain Hashjack's perspective. What we're going to show for this demo is what happens when that backdoor container runs in Kubernetes. So same idea as we've just seen, but contextualized in a Kubernetes system. Reverse shells, I'm sure we know what these are, but just to be clear, it is the process of sneaking code into somebody else's application that then calls back out to us. It's a reverse shell because it comes back through a firewall, it kind of punches out. We're just sat waiting to listen for somebody to hit us up. So, supply chain reverse shell, very similar to the previous, of course. We uploaded this malicious container into a public registry. It's pulled and run in production. Incidentally, container image scanning is MVP for minimum viable security for cloud native. The malicious image payload runs stealthily in the production front-end container and back to the reverse shell popping. It should be noted that if we do run privileged containers, we've turned off all of the security mechanisms available, And this one-liner will elegantly pop us a shell from Duffy cooling the CTO by surveillance and in cold water. So we are going to establish command and control into an image, run a backdoor image on the target cluster, reverse shell, theoretical profit. Let's see how we go. Where's my mouse now? So it's that. That is this one. That is not the right window. So, first of all, let's just rename this guy. Authenticate into my cloud system. Like I said, I recently, about 45 minutes ago, I just destroyed my local installation. So it's mystical if any of these things will work. I'm going to refresh. Let me just see if I've actually got. Cool. Okay, I've got access. So, first of all, we're running IDS on this cluster. It's called Falco. It is an open source project. Klog is my shorthand for Kubernetes logging. This will tell us if anything is noticeable, but we won't run that for the whole time. What I'm going to run now is a shell catcher. So this uses ngrok, which is TCP port forwarding, to push a local port up to the internet. So at the bottom there, we've just created a tunnel. So that port sits on the ngrok servers, and it's public. And in here, this is where our reverse shell will hook. That's then just blocking, waiting for that to happen. And here we go. This is what we're going to run. Kube control, run, reverse shell, output YAML. That image sounds plausibly safe. This is our reverse shell. That's the IP I'm coming into and the ports. And you can see that I'm doing some setting here. So instead of creating, we will be able to run this to the output. Instead of creating YAML to do this and maintaining it for every version, I'm just kind of cheating by having Kubernetes do it for me. Okay, there we go. So that has worked. Someone's tried to connect anyway. Hi, nice to meet you. Okay, there we go. So that's the reverse shell. What's happened here, just to have a look. Just have a look. So we are running a Kubernetes deployment. We're calling it reverse shell. What we have here is host PID true. That is the host process namespace. Containers nest these things. The host process namespace is the one that can see everything. And then we create subordinate namespaces in order to make a container this collection of namespaces, C groups, capabilities, Linux security modules. Containers don't really exist. There is no struct in the kernel that represents a container. So what we're doing here is just turning off one of the surrounding container security boundaries. Container security boundaries. This is our reverse shell. Keep on looping this, and importantly here, we're able to run a privileged container. This is a non-production configuration. I should not be able to run this container with privilege because it allows me to do things like this. Firstly, what should I be able to see in a container process namespace? Probably not container D, which is the underlying container runtime. Where can I see this? Well, because I've turned on the host process sharing. What about the contents of dev? Well, of course, the devices attached to a system, let's do that. Devices attached to a system are privileged. And we wouldn't expect container abstraction to leak those. Yet, here we go, here we see them. So we can run that nifty little one-liner that Duffy and Ian cooked up. So what are we going to do here? This is nsenter. Okay, let's do that into this. So nsenter is namespace entering. This means that we go, right, well, PID1 in this container already has symlinks in the proc virtual file system. The container creates this file system, the kernel creates this file system in order to make some things available to us. Everything in Linux is a file. This is for ease of I'm not sure it is. It's the paradigm that Linux is built on. We're joining the mount namespace. We're joining the Unix time sharing namespace, which is basically the host name, inter-process communication, network, process ID, and then we're going to start bin bash. So what does this mean? It means we have now routed the host from inside a container via an essentially sanctioned mechanism. This is just an element of misconfiguration. There was no breakout here. It has literally broken out. but this has worked since the dawn of containers, and it will work until somebody decides to change these things in a substantial manner. And again, we've still got full access to the host process table, but now we can drop things on the file system. So we can achieve persistence, and we can steal things from the host. Maybe we're going to do some nefarious cron dropping. Maybe we're going to play with the contents of root SSH authorized keys and change configurations so we can jump in there. Maybe we're just going to establish another reverse shell. There we go. That's the second demo. But wait, there's more. So on we go. I think there's 4 coming up, right? So same diagram again. We came in through here and theoretically infected that image. It was pulled by a trusting system, and as an attacker, we just stood there with a baseball glove on, waiting for somebody to shoot that home run straight into the glove. Okay, next we have non-deterministic container breakouts. This will be fun. So, Dirty Pipe hit us about 3 weeks ago, I think. And the issue that we have here, it's to do with dirty pages in memory. It's similar to Dirty Cow, which if this doesn't work consistently, I will also try and demo. Another SIG-COM Bloomery. It's not a container escape. It's a process that wants it to be free. And of course, containers are just processes. We should have the Unix, Linuxy single responsibility model and the single process per container. So what are we going to do for a container escape? As an attacker, we want to be able to run some nefarious abstract evil command in either a secured or an unsecured pod and bust out. Now, security best practices and a well-honed, customized security configuration are very different things. Containers can be more secure than standard VMs if we treat them as a single process and drop as many capabilities as possible, essentially construct them in a straitjacket of configuration, security configuration, and ensure that extra applications and tools, especially shells, are not available. It is possible to statically compile an application, drop it into a fundamentally empty file system, and run that as a container. That is a pretty difficult thing to escape from once sort of prevention of escalation of privileges and standard Linux security flags are enabled. So in this case, our evil command here is Dirty Pipe. It should be noted that there are plenty of CVEs that are happening right now and that have been going on for the last sort of 18 months or so. It's a little bit of a deluge. Many of these are exploitable, but they really rely on incorrect configuration. And you'll see here things like attacker with a special privilege, capability sysadmin, raw IO, BPF, BTF load. These are very specific things that come by default unless disabled. And by default, we should be dropping all capabilities. Our security contexts in a container should be hardened, let's say. And this is from the inimitable Chris Nova, who has been through and helped and cataloged all of these for us. What is a container, I hear you ask? Well, very quickly, it is a collection of namespaces in Kubernetes. A pod abstraction is a munging of containers. So what do we have here? We've got the container workload. This is our application. Maybe it's a hello world. Maybe it's a full-on monolithic app. Maybe it's a microservice, happy middle ground. There is a shared network namespace here. So that means that ETH0, or VETH as it is, and the local host adapter is shared between all containers in a pod. A pod is a trust boundary of sorts, and you can see as well that there's some shared storage. The process namespace, mount, C group, they all wrap an individual container. And then we have various other things wrapping here. The default pod configuration is where we generally put our Linux security modules. And from a defense in-depth perspective, if we run hardened or tightened SE Linux profiles around most applications, container breakouts are very difficult because we probably need to drop something somewhere on the file system, and SE Linux is an allow list. If we don't have access to put things in a place, a lot of container breakouts are blocked. The same can be said for a well-wrapped app armor profile, although it's slightly different because there's a wider more rich configuration language that targets more user-based things. Setconf then is just system call blocking in the kernel. So once a system call gets into the kernel, if it's not on the allow list, it will get seg filtered and we won't get any more information in user space. So within this workload, we see the container, dev, proc, sys, they should be masked. The container runtime, if configured correctly, will lie about the contents of those directories because the kernel does not treat those as namespace containerized things. And we've also got some other namespaces here. The user namespace is absent, of course. C groups are resource accounting for containers. C group v1 continues to have issues. You can essentially unshare yourself out of the C group. So it's quite difficult to lock down. C group v2 is really complex and works on a kind of squeezing balloon pressure system developed at Facebook. It's still been blocked recently. Nothing is entirely secure, as we all know. So on to dirty pipe in that context. What does it mean? It's similar to dirty cow. It is essentially the injection of code into process memory that's owned by root. And I quote, an unprivileged local user could use this flaw to write to pages in the page cache backed by read-only files and as such escalate their privileges on the system. This means in the exploit that we're going to run through now, we're going to overwrite the runc binary on the host with our small exploits. We'll build that binary exploit inside the container as an unprivileged user. There are specific connotations of this particular exploit. You can't write to the first byte. You can only of the page. You can only write the 4K. So you have to assemble something small to get in there. So we'll use a bespoke ELF binary to bypass it. This is taking issue of taking advantage of an issue within the Linux kernel itself. Because containers run as processes starting on a running kernel, as distinct from VMs which emulate BIOS bootstrap, boot PID1, boot user space, and then finally start your desired application. So with a container, we're a lot faster, but we're operating on a running kernel. We're sharing a kernel between multiple processes, even with these kind of windows out onto the universe that the kernel paints for each individual container process. When the kernel lets us down as containerized people, we have nothing. It's very difficult, and so that's why we have to rely on the security modules and detection, because a balance of preventative and detective controls is the only way we can really get to any sort of reasonable steady state. Okay, so we will run the dirty pipe container. We'll open a listening socket, just an end cap, on the container network bridge, so 172.2 something probably. We'll run an exploit from inside the container, which will attack the kernel. We'll then drop this bit of assembly that we've assembled over runc, which will then, because it's running, reverse shell back to us inside the container and fire a root-owned reverse shell. That allows us then to root the kubelet. Okay, so let's go full screen here. All right, so what have we got here? We have got a soon-to-be released dirty pipe exploits. First of all, we are here. Okay, so first of all, in the container that we are going to run, we've got a libsecconf tease where we mess around with that very slightly. We've compiled this runc small binary that we will then symlink into procself.exe. This is taking advantage of an assumption with procself.exe virtual file system. That's old as Linux, and Linux did not anticipate, naturally, the existence of namespaces. So there was a procself.exe bypass within the last few months, well, the last couple of years, and this is abusing the same system. So how are we going to do that? Well, we've got a slightly nefarious setconf that we'll put in there as well. We have also got this. So what are we going to do here? Well, various things. The point is, once we get down to the actual payload, we're firing this reverse shell and hoping that our IP inside the container is in that range of 2 to 5. Yeah, looking at that, I wonder whether that wouldn't be 0 to 5 now that I think about it. I have my excellent colleague James Cleverly-Prance to thank for all the magic in here, and he's linked on the title slides. So let us see how we get on. So first, let's just check the runc versioning that we've got. Okay, so this is the runc binary that we will overwrite. This runc is the low-level container builder. We're running a vulnerable kernel. We'll look at which kernels remain vulnerable now. And yeah, as I say, thoughts and prayers for this one, because non-determinism runs rife. All right, so let's build the things. We've compiled or assembled our runc spool pack here. We've messed with the seccomp as well, and then built everything into a container. Now, if we run this container, it should theoretically, hold on. Of course, we're vagrant, and we're in this mounted directory. Let's see what happens. Okay, we're listening. Let's see if this works. And in the meantime, oh, yeah, that worked straight away. And I lost faith in it. Let's get rid of these. That. Okay, so we have immediately called back, and our ID is now root on that node. Where are we? We're in the file system we were in before, but this is the host's unnamespaced view. So we haven't moved. This is the location on the host that the file system is pivot rooted into. It's like a root system call, but it's just a bit newer. It does the same thing. And this fundamental power container mount namespace is created. So what can we do from here? Well, let's again just have a look at the contents of the file system. Let's see if we can see what's in there. Yes, a couple of things. We've broken out the container despite the configuration boundaries, and that is demo number 2. I think I can get this done in time, I think. Okay, summary, always be patching. The benefit of containers is that we have very fast deployment pipelines available. We have this works on my machine mentality abstracted away, because handling different kernel versions or feature flags and environment variable injection, generally containers do give you a heterogeneous runtime environment. Of course, the issue here is the kernel, and I have wider opinions about infrastructure as code and how DevOps should do these things. They're golden-based VMs, immutable infrastructure, and blue-green deployments. Okay, host enumerations. So, let's continue to paint this picture. We have, let's go back one quickly. We have shown how we can inject code into somebody else's organization. We have looked at how we can break out of the container and get onto the host. And now, from a Kubernetes perspective, what does that mean? It means that we are onto a node, and a node runs a kubelet. A kubelet is the delegated authority of the API server in the Kubernetes system. And that means it runs containers for us. So the kubelet has a container runtime. This is runc. This is what we just popped. That starts various containers. It also provides these probing services to check for the health of workloads, and the health of workloads is related to how long they need to be available for and stay available for. But notably here, we also have orchestrator injected environment variables. What environment variables we want? Well, hopefully not too much. We also have sequence and config maps. They can be environment variables or temp-fs mounts. In the same way, the container file system has to exist on the host, the process has to exist on the host, and it's on the same kernel, it's on the same file system. The VM abstraction is not the same. You have more difficulty introspecting into there without going through the hypervisor. On this, the equivalent hypervisor technology is just Linux. It's just the kernel. So these temp-fs mounts, which contain sequence and config maps for a container up here, are available to view all across the node root. I hope you can see where we're going with this, which is there. Okay. So what will we do? We will, from the position that we were just in, which is the rooted kubelet host, let's get this one. sorry, I'm in the wrong direction. Let's just hit that. Okay, so from the rooted kubelet host, as root on a kubelet, we'll enumerate what's available on the file system to us, which will include not only our own workload that we just broke out of, but everything else that's scheduled onto the same node. That means that because secrets have to be obviously co-tenanted, available to that process, we'll be able to see the secrets that exist on that host for the workloads that are there. We will then exfiltrate those credentials and non-ambiguous profits. So, okay, first of all, I'm just going to, let's do this first. Okay, so in order to achieve this, I'm going to add stations with different collection of nodes, he says. You don't care about that, I hope, as a byproduct of my uninstalling half of my user space. Sweet. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is put in my portable hacking stuff. So first of all, we'll just escalate in here because that's back at the starting point that we were at with the previous. Then I'm going to upload my, oh, I do need it now. God damn it, I wonder if I can do this quickly. Then I'm going to upload, probably that, isn't it? So I'm rooting there. Mystical if this worked properly. So then I'll upload my, my sort of custom like portable pen test kit. I can upload it manually if I have to. But that looks like it happily worked. The brinksmanship. Okay, there we go. So now I have pulled in a load of tooling from S3. Hopefully that's not open in your production systems. There are other ways to push these kind of things up. But really, preventing internet access is an important thing. I'm going to use a bash function called k22 file system dump. Kubernetes secrets. What does it do? Can I colorize that as well? No. Okay. Maybe it's because it's. No. All right. So what are we doing here? We are looking for everything under var lib Kubernetes. Maybe you can appreciate presumably what that is. Pods, everything that's there. The mounted volumes, Kubernetes I/O. This used to just be called secrets, or that asterisk. It is now a combination of secrets, config maps, and projected volumes. I will come back to why those are important, but the dark, mysterious secrets of Kubernetes secrets never fail to amaze. Initially, they were just base64 encrypted. Then there was a symmetric key available on the API server, so when they were persisted to a data store called etcd, then it was symmetrically encrypted, just the values. But still, a service account token, which is the cryptographic identity of a pod, and is just a jot, does not get rotated, has no expiry, has no claims. Projected volumes then fix that by not only rotating and expiring, auto-rotating, expiring, and providing claim information. The caveat and the wrinkle, of course, is that the application consuming that has to be cognizant and has to rotate the key material in memory. The application starts, it consumes its configuration, and then what? Configuration changes. It either has to iNotify watch or pull that configuration every time it's used. So this is not just a blanket fix. There's a lot of application work required to fix this problem. I'm going to be too melodramatic. Okay, so first of all, and don't forget, we are the root user here. We've rooted the host, so we have full omniscience and visibility of everything available into var-lib kubelet pods. These are the hashes of the UIDs, the unique identifiers of the pods running on the system. Now, I'll trim this down slightly because it is slightly long. So we'll run that k22 file system dump, which I didn't actually enumerate properly. Okay, so we'll search this directory. If there's nothing there, then boo-hoo. If there is, let's have a look for these things. Now, this is the service account token. By default, all pods in Kubernetes have this service account token mounted into them. It forms the basis for cryptographic identity and is actually a good idea. Where it's not a good idea is that by default there is a token created per namespace, and the ability to misconfigure that is reasonably high. So by binding excess permissions to that default token and not testing and checking that, it's possible that this pivot game between pods with cryptographic identities, which we can assume is like a transitive pivot journey through a cluster. This is default Kubernetes style hacking, except instead of doing it from within the pod, we're doing it for all the pods on the node, because we've routed the node. So we're looking for something interesting, and we will look for those, and then we'll look for everything that's not one of those. So these are the secrets that are mounted in customly defined, and then if we enter a search term, then that's what the bottom bit of code will do. So with that, let's dump the thing and see what's there. Okay, there's a lot. So, as we can see, we've got a lot of this is API access related things. Kubernetes is very good with the control plane and the applications and workloads that it ships, that it needs to run itself. It's very good at delineating privilege and working to least privilege and dropping privilege. So I don't expect any of these to yield anything useful. I'm not the first person to do this exercise. What else might we have? Sorry for that. Slightly introducing. Okay. There's a few other things. The node autoscaler could be interesting. We have some application rules mounted in. I mean, we can see the innards of the guts of all the configuration here. But what else do we have? He says, see some Falco rules. Let's search for something specific. Dump the whole thing again. The colorization there. I wonder if I believe I've set this up correct. Whoops. Let's search for. Okay, so I haven't set this up quite correctly. Let's redeploy the things that we're actually looking for. It may not surprise you to know. Yeah, there we go. Well, I missed the fundamental setup step, which is probably no surprise. Now, if we rerun, our search here, having given away the keys, we can see that somebody's mounted AWS access keys and secrets into the container. Why would you do this? Well, this used to be the way that people would interact with creating S3 buckets, dealing with scaling, maybe going to auto-scale Kubernetes from the control plane nodes themselves, because they understand the workloads better than the auto-scaling on AWS itself. So this is pretty common. When we pen test stuff, we find this a lot. These are the keys themselves. Okay, that looks fun. So now we have just exfiltrated some keys. People are welcome to try and use those in the meantime if they want. All right, so we're getting there. So we could use stolen service accounts. That would generally be the way to pivot through things. But instead, the goal here is to not multi-tenant data classifications. If something is sensitive, it shouldn't be next to something that you wouldn't want to be compromised. This also affects application topology, and thank you to the cats. Right, in the last 5 minutes, cloud account takeover. No warehouse workers were harmed in the making of this GIF, but it's very easy to do something catastrophic without much effort. What are we going to do? Let's have a look at those stolen keys and see what we can do with them. Where are we here? Okay, so we want this. The stolen AWS keys. This means that we can now masquerade as this user. We can spoof their identity because cryptographically, apparently with them, cryptographically from a sort of key and token perspective. So, AWS access key and secret keys. What's the first thing we do? Get core identity. Oh dear. This is the foil to many of the things that I've shown you today. Dropping canary tokens around your infrastructure, in your local home directory, in build servers, These things should never get called. Canary tokens are honeypots that are masquerading as credentials. When I used this credential to make this call, I just got an email saying, somebody's used a token that should never have been used. These essentially allow us to detect attacks in progress. It says, where is that? Oh, you missed a slide somewhere. They're basically honeypots. We can deploy them as AWS keys, we can deploy them as other cryptographic identities. It is strongly recommended that you strew these liberally around, especially your local machine, because if you get compromised by one of these unknown supply chain attacks, it's unlikely you'll know about it until afterwards. It's impossible, no one has the hours in the day to check every single thing that they install from open source. Okay, and we can now whiz through the end of the talk. What next? Well, you can DIY your own security. I will be doing this presentation at KubeCon. I'm slightly morphing the presentation each time, so feel free to attend and heckle. Kubernetes breaches. There are loads of ways we can get breached. Again, lists versus graphs. We need to be authoritative and fastidious in order to ensure that we have a rigid security posture. When pen testing, I like to use this. This is from the back of the book. It's kind of a mind map that was turned into a circuit board, and just enumerating places that things can go wrong. Obligatory control plane reference. This is our job. We really enjoy it. And with that, thank you for your attention.